The polished mahogany of the auction block gleamed under the gallery lights as the auctioneer's voice filled the air with practiced enthusiasm. In the far corner of the crowded room, Erica Garcia adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses, the auction catalogue trembling slightly in her hands. At 28, she was far younger than most of the serious collectors in the room, and certainly less wealthy. But no one in that gallery, perhaps in the entire world, understood the significance of lot number 157 better than she did. Next, up, ladies and gentlemen, an item of extraordinary sport significance, the auctioneer announced, his voice dropping to a reverent tone that caused a ripple of anticipation through the crowd. A pair of Nike Air Jordan 1 sneakers, game-worn by Michael Jordan during his rookie season with the Chicago Bulls, 1984-1985. Erica's heart hammered against her ribs as two white-gloved attendants carried the display case onto the stage. The red and black sneakers inside, scuffed, worn, perfect in their imperfection, represented more than just a piece of sports memorabilia. They represented her last chance. 3 months behind on rent, facing eviction from her small Chicago apartment, and with her father's medical bills piling up, Erica had made the painful decision to sell the only thing of real value she possessed. These weren't just any Jordan sneakers. These were the pair that her father, Antonio Garcia, had acquired directly from Jordan himself during his brief stint as a junior equipment manager for the Bulls in the mid-80s. As authenticated by the accompanying documentation, these sneakers were gifted to the original owner by Michael Jordan after the Bulls versus Knicks game on March 15, 1985, the auctioneer continued. Opening bid starts at $75,000. Erica winced at the figure. The sports memorabilia expert she'd consulted had estimated a value between $100,000 and $150,000, enough to clear her debts, pay her father's mounting medical expenses, and perhaps even put a small down payment on a modest house where he could recover in peace. But auctions were unpredictable, and she couldn't help but worry that the sneakers might sell for less than she desperately needed. Across the room, several paddle-wielding bidders immediately signaled their interest. A silver-haired man in an immaculate suit, a stylishly dressed woman with a determined expression, a young tech entrepreneur type who didn't look much older than Erica herself. $80,000, called the auctioneer. Do I hear $85,000? The bidding advanced steadily, each incremental increase sending a corresponding jolt through Erica's system. These shoes had been a fixture in her childhood home, displayed in her father's modest trophy case alongside family photos and his high school basketball trophies. She'd grown up hearing the story of how a young Michael Jordan had noticed her father's dedicated work behind the scenes and had rewarded him with this priceless gift. $110,000. Announced the auctioneer, and Erica allowed herself a small breath of relief. They'd passed the minimum threshold she needed. Do I hear $120,000? Just then, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. The heavy doors swung open, and several security personnel entered, flanking a tall figure whose presence immediately electrified the room. Even at 50-something, Michael Jordan's aura was unmistakable. He moved with the same grace that had once defied gravity on basketball courts around the world, though now it was channeled into the confident stride of a business mogul. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Jordan took a seat in the back row, acknowledging the auctioneer with a subtle nod. Erica froze, her throat suddenly dry. She'd known, of course, that news of the auction might reach him. These were, after all, a significant artifact from his legendary career, but she hadn't actually expected him to appear in person. We continue at $120,000, the auctioneer recovered. Smoothly, though even his professional demeanor seemed affected by the basketball legend's arrival. Do I hear $130,000? The bidding resumed with renewed energy, quickly climbing to $150,000, then $175,000. Erica watched, stunned, as the number rose far beyond what she had dared to hope. At $200,000, the field narrowed to just two determined bidders, the silver-haired man and the tech entrepreneur. $250,000, called the young tech mogul, a challenge in his voice as he glanced at his rival. The silver-haired man hesitated, then reluctantly shook his head. The room held its collective breath. $250,000 going once, the auctioneer announced. Going twice. 500,000. The voice that cut through the tension was calm, authoritative, and instantly recognizable. All heads turned toward Michael Jordan, who hadn't raised a paddle, but instead simply spoken the figure aloud. The auctioneer blinked, momentarily thrown off his rhythm. "Mr. Jordan, are you entering the bidding at $500,000? Jordan nodded once, his expression unreadable. The tech entrepreneur's face fell, and he lowered his paddle in defeat. No one was going to outbid Michael Jordan for his own sneakers. Not at that price and not in that room. $500,000 going once, going twice. The auctioneer's gavel hovered expectantly. Sold to Mr. Michael Jordan for $500,000. A round of applause broke out, tinged with the excitement of having witnessed something extraordinary. Erica remained frozen in place, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't process. Relief, certainly. The amount was beyond her wildest expectations, but also a profound sadness. This final separation from the shoes felt like losing a piece of her father all over again. As the crowd began to disperse between lots, Erica gathered her belongings, preparing to make her way to the business office to complete the transaction. She needed to call her father at the rehabilitation facility right away with the good news. "Excuse me." She turned to find one of the auction house staff addressing her. "Yes, Mr. Jordan would like to speak with you privately, if you have a moment." Erica's heart skipped a beat. "With me? You are Ms. Garcia, the consignor of Lot 157, correct?" She nodded numbly. "Please follow me." Erica was led through a maze of corridors to a small, elegantly appointed room, typically reserved for high-value clients. Michael Jordan stood by the window, his back to the door, silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. Up close, he seemed even taller than she remembered from the rare Bulls games her father had taken her to as a child. "Mr. Jordan," the staff member announced. "This is Ms. Garcia." Jordan turned, his eyes immediately finding hers with an intensity that had intimidated countless opponents on the court. But there was something else there too, a question perhaps. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Garcia," he said after the staff member had discreetly withdrawn. "I think we have something to discuss." Erica swallowed hard. "First, I should thank you. The amount you paid, it's life-changing for my family." Jordan gestured to a chair, inviting her to sit. "Antonio Garcia's daughter," he said, not a question, but a confirmation. "I recognize the name in the provenance documents. You remember my father?" Erica couldn't hide her surprise. A small smile softened Jordan's features. "I remember everyone who was part of those early days. Your father worked harder than most of the players, always first in, last out." Erica felt a lump forming in her throat. "That sounds like him." The documentation said the owner was selling. "Due to financial hardship," Jordan continued, his tone neutral but his gaze observant. "That's you?" She hesitated, pride warring with honesty. "Yes, my father suffered a stroke 8 months ago. The medical bills, insurance only covers so much, and I lost my job during layoffs last year." The words tumbled out more than she'd intended to share. "I've been freelancing, but it's not enough. I didn't want to sell them, but you don't have to explain," Jordan interrupted gently. "Life happens. Believe me, I understand that better than most." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Erica struggled to find the right words. "How do you make small talk with a living legend who just paid $500,000 for a pair of shoes your father once treasured? How is Antonio doing now?" Jordan asked, breaking the silence. He's stable. The rehabilitation is going well, but it's a long road. She managed a small smile. He still talks about those days with the Bulls. They were the highlight of his life. Jordan nodded thoughtfully. Those shoes, he said after a moment. Do you know why I gave them to your father? Erica leaned forward slightly. Her father had told the story so many times that it had become family legend, but hearing Jordan's version, that would be something else entirely. Dad always said it was because you noticed he stayed late to repair some of your gear after a particularly rough game against the Knicks. Jordan's laugh was warm, genuine. That's part of it. What he probably didn't tell you was that everyone else had written me off as a hotshot rookie with more flash than substance. We were losing that season, losing badly, and the veterans were resentful. The coaching staff was frustrated, and the fans were impatient. He walked to the window again, looking out at the city skyline. Your father was different. He saw something in me that I was still learning to see in myself. One night after most everyone had cleared out, I was practicing alone, missing shot after shot, angry at the world. Antonio was cleaning up, and I figured he wasn't paying attention. But then he said something I've never forgotten. Erica waited, hanging on every word. He said, "You're going to change the game forever, but only if you remember it's still just a game." Simple words, but I needed to hear them right then. Jordan turned back to face her. The shoes were a thank you for that moment of clarity, for seeing me as a person, not just a promising draft pick or a potential marketing phenomenon. Tears pricked at the corners of Erica's eyes. That sounded exactly like her father. Seeing the person beneath the persona, offering wisdom without expectation. I had no idea, she said softly. Most people don't realize how much a small act of kindness can impact someone else's life. Jordan moved to a briefcase sitting on a side table and opened it, revealing the sneakers, now carefully nestled inside. These belong with your father. They always have. Erica stared, uncomprehending. But you bought them. They're yours now. He bought them, Jordan agreed, and now I'm giving them back to Antonio Garcia with one condition. What condition? She asked, hardly daring to breathe. That you never sell them again. When the time comes, donate them to the Basketball Hall of Fame in your father's name. He closed the briefcase and extended it toward her. The money is yours to keep. Consider it long overdue interest on a loan of wisdom. Erica's hands shook as she accepted the briefcase. I don't know what to say. This is just tell Antonio I haven't forgotten what he taught me. Jordan's expression was solemn now, and that I'm still trying to remember it's just a game, even when it isn't anymore. Before Erica could respond, there was a knock at the door. The auction house director appeared, looking apologetic. Mr. Jordan, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation with the press outside. Jordan nodded, the brief moment of vulnerability replaced by his public persona once more. I'll be right there. He turned back to Erica, extending his hand. It was good to meet you, Ms. Garcia. Please give my best to your father. Erica shook his hand, still stunned by what had just occurred. Thank you, she managed, for everything. As Jordan prepared to leave, he paused at the door. One more thing, he said, almost as an afterthought. Tell your father I've been thinking about getting back into team ownership. If he's interested once he's recovered, I could use someone with his perspective in player development. And then he was gone, leaving Erica alone with a briefcase containing both a priceless family treasure and the promise of a future she couldn't have imagined just hours earlier. Outside the auction house, as the evening sun cast long shadows across the city streets, Erica pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. She needed to call her father. She needed to tell him that sometimes the game of life offers unexpected second chances, and that Michael Jordan had never forgotten the equipment manager who saw him not as a future legend, but simply as a young man finding his way. The Chicago, Morning dawned crisp and clear as Erica Garcia guided her father's wheelchair through the automatic doors of the rehabilitation center. Antonio Garcia squinted against the sunlight, his weathered face breaking into a broad smile that erased years of hardship in an instant. At 63, he still possessed the quiet dignity that had characterized his entire life, even as his body struggled to recover from the stroke that had nearly taken him 8 months earlier. "Mija, you didn't have to come so early," he said, his voice slightly slurred but stronger than it had been in weeks. The briefcase secured in his lap was clutched tightly between hands that still occasionally trembled without his permission. "Wild horses couldn't have kept me away, Dad," Erica replied, unable to contain her own excitement. After breaking the news to him yesterday about Jordan's extraordinary gesture, she'd spent a sleepless night arranging for his day pass from the facility. Some moments demanded to be experienced in person, away from the sterile environment of hospital rooms and physical therapy equipment. They had agreed on Garfield Park as their destination, a place that held special significance for Antonio. As a young immigrant from Honduras, newly arrived in Chicago with nothing but ambition and a profound love for basketball, he had spent countless hours on the park's courts, honing his skills and dreaming of a future in the game. Though his playing aspirations had never materialized at a professional level, those dreams had ultimately led him to his position with the Bulls, where he had found a different kind of fulfillment. As Erica pushed the wheelchair along the winding paths of the park, the familiar landscape came into view. Basketball courts where weekend warriors were already engaged in pickup games, their shouts and the rhythmic bounce of balls creating a soundtrack that visibly energized Antonio. "Over there," he directed, pointing to a quiet bench beneath a sprawling oak tree with a clear view of the main court. It was his preferred observation post, the place where he had taught Erica to analyze the game beyond just scoring, to see the poetry in a perfectly executed assist, the art in defensive positioning, the chess match unfolding between opposing coaches. Once settled, Antonio carefully placed the briefcase on his lap and ran his fingers over its smooth leather surface. "Are you ready?" Erica asked softly. Antonio nodded, his expression solemn. "I still can't believe it," he said, "after all these years." With reverent movements, he unlatched the case and opened it to reveal the pair of Nike Air Jordan 1 sneakers. Nestled inside, red and black, scuffed and worn from actual gameplay, they were unmistakably authentic, a physical embodiment of basketball history and, more importantly, a tangible connection to a pivotal moment in Antonio's life. "Dios mío," he whispered, gently tracing the contours of the left shoe with his fingertips. "They're exactly as I remember." Erica settled beside him on the bench, watching emotions play across her father's face. Wonder, nostalgia, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. "Tell me the story again, Dad," she urged, though she'd heard it countless times throughout her childhood. "The real version, not the short one." Antonio smiled, understanding her request. The version Jordan had shared with her had revealed dimensions to the story that her father, in his characteristic humility, had never emphasized. "It was March 1985, he began, his voice growing stronger as he slipped into the familiar narrative. The Bulls were having a rough season, especially for a team with such a promising rookie. Michael was feeling the pressure, not just from opponents, but from his own teammates. Veterans like Jordan Newman and Keith Spencer didn't appreciate a newcomer getting all the attention when the team was still losing games. He paused, his gaze drifting to the players on the court before them, perhaps seeing echoes of that distant past in their movements. That night against the Knicks, it was bad. Michael scored 30 points, but we still lost by 15. The locker room afterward was tense. I was just doing my job, staying out of the way, making sure everything was clean and in order. Most of the team cleared out quickly, but Michael stayed behind. Antonio's eyes took on a faraway look. I found him later in the practice gym, long after everyone else had gone home, just shooting over and over, missing more than he made. I'd never seen him miss that much. I was cleaning up, trying to be invisible, but something about the way he was punishing himself, it wasn't right. Erica nodded encouragingly, now understanding the parts of the story her father had always glossed over. He threw the ball so hard at the backboard that it bounced all the way to where I was mopping. When he came to retrieve it, I could see it in his face, the doubt, the frustration. Everyone forgets that before Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan, he was just a young man carrying impossible expectations. Antonio looked down at the sneakers. I don't know what made me speak up. It wasn't my place. But I told him, "You're going to change the game forever, but only if you remember it's still just a game." Simple words, nothing profound. They were profound to him, Erica said softly. He remembered them word for word, Dad. Antonio shook, his head in disbelief. We talked for almost an hour after that, not about basketball strategy or his contract or endorsements, just about the joy of the game, why we both fell in love with it in the first place. He asked about Honduras, about my family, about my own basketball dreams. No one had ever asked me those things at the arena before. He carefully lifted the right sneaker, turning it to reveal a small mark on the inner heel. The next day, after the team practice, he called me over and handed me these in a plain gym bag. Said they'd brought him luck despite the loss, and now maybe they could bring me some too. I tried to refuse. Even then I knew what they might be worth someday, but he insisted. "You never told me he talked to you about Honduras," Erica said, a new understanding dawning on her. Her father had always emphasized the shoes themselves in his telling, not the conversation that preceded the gift. Some conversations stay private. "Mija," Antonio replied with a gentle smile, "until they need to be shared." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the basketball games unfold before them. Erica thought about the extraordinary chain of events, how her desperate decision to sell a family treasure had unexpectedly reconnected her father with a figure from his past, creating a new chapter rather than closing an old one. "What are you thinking about the job offer?" she finally asked, broaching the subject that had dominated her thoughts since yesterday, after sharing Jordan's parting suggestion about a position in player development. She had expected immediate enthusiasm from her father. Instead, he had grown quiet, contemplative, promising to think about it overnight. Antonio carefully returned the sneaker to the briefcase before answering. "I'm thinking that second chances are rare gifts that shouldn't be squandered," he said thoughtfully, "but I'm also thinking about what's truly important at this stage of my life." He reached for Erica's hand, squeezing it with surprising strength. "Working with young players, helping them see beyond just their statistics and contracts, there's value in that, real value, but only if I can do it right, only if I'm strong enough." "You will be," Erica assured him, her faith in his recovery unwavering despite the doctor's more cautious prognosis. "And I'll help however I can." Antonio nodded, his decision seemingly made. "Then we'll tell him yes, when the time is right. But first, I need to stand on my own 2 feet again, literally and figuratively." As if to emphasize his point, he closed the briefcase and secured its latches with deliberate movements. "Now, enough about me. Tell me more about this collector who kept bidding against Jordan. Ryan Jenkins, you said his name was." Erica felt a blush creeping into her cheeks. "Dad." "What?" Antonio's eyes twinkled mischievously. "He called the rehabilitation center this morning asking for permission to visit me. Something about documenting the provenance of the shoes for his collection records, even though he didn't win the auction." "He called here?" Erica was genuinely surprised. She remembered the persistent young tech entrepreneur from the auction, his evident passion for basketball memorabilia, and his gracious acknowledgement of defeat when Jordan entered the bidding. "What did you tell him?" I told him my daughter handles all my appointments, Antonio replied with an innocent shrug that didn't fool Erica for a second. And that she makes excellent coffee at that new shop on Michigan Avenue. Dad, Erica groaned, though she couldn't suppress a smile. Some aspects of her father's personality had remained completely unaffected by his stroke, particularly his not-so-subtle attempts at matchmaking. What? You've been so busy taking care of me and working. Those freelance jobs that you barely leave the house except for hospital visits, Antonio pointed out. Besides, anyone who appreciates basketball history enough to bid $250,000 for sneakers can't be all bad, right? Before Erica could formulate a response, her phone chimed with an incoming message. Glancing at the screen, she was startled to see a number she didn't recognize and a text that made her heart skip a beat. Ms. Garcia, this is Ryan Jenkins from yesterday's auction. Hope this isn't inappropriate, but your father suggested I reach out directly about documenting the Jordan sneakers history. Would you be open to discussing over coffee sometime this week? Antonio raised his eyebrows expectantly. Good news? Erica shook her head in amused disbelief. You're incorrigible, you know that. I prefer strategic, Antonio countered with a chuckle. Life is too short to waste opportunities, mija. If my experience has taught me anything, it's that. As Erica contemplated, her response, a commotion near the park entrance, caught their attention. A black SUV with tinted windows had pulled up, and several people were emerging, including a tall, unmistakable figure that caused nearby basketball players to stop mid-game and stare in disbelief. Is that? Erica began, squinting against the sunlight. Antonio straightened in his wheelchair, an expression of surprise and pleasure crossing his features. Well, I'll be damned, he said softly. Michael Jordan still knows how to make an entrance. Indeed, Jordan was making his way toward them, casually dressed in jeans and a simple polo shirt, yet still commanding attention with every step. Flanking him were two men in business attire carrying leather portfolios, associates by the look of them, and a woman whom Erica recognized with a start as Karina Hill, the Bulls' current director of player personnel. Antonio Garcia, Jordan called out as he approached, his voice carrying across the park. Still analyzing games from the best seat in the house, I see. Antonio's face split into a wide grin. Old habits die hard, he replied, extending his hand, which Jordan clasped warmly in both of his own. You're looking stronger than when I last saw you at the hospital 2 months ago, Jordan observed, pulling up a nearby bench to sit across. If from them, Erica blinked in surprise. You visited my father in the hospital? 3 times, Antonio confirmed, seeming to enjoy her astonishment. I told you I had a special visitor, but you assumed I was confused from the medication. I would have come more often, but I didn't want to create disruptions for the staff, Jordan explained. Your father and I had some catching up to do after all these years. Erica struggled to reconcile this revelation with everything else that had transpired. So the auction, you finding out about the shoes, that wasn't a coincidence, Jordan exchanged a knowing look with Antonio. Let's just say I keep tabs on people who matter, he said. When I heard about Antonio's condition through mutual connections at the Bulls organization, I wanted to help. But your father here, he gestured to Antonio with a mixture of respect and exasperation, is possibly the most stubborn man I've ever met, and I've played with Dennis Rodman. Antonio shrugged unapologetically. I told you I didn't want charity. And I told you it wasn't charity, Jordan countered. It was an investment in someone who once invested in me when it mattered most. Turning to Erica, he continued, when I learned the shoes were being auctioned, I figured there had to be a serious reason. Antonio would never part with them otherwise. It provided a way to help that even his pride couldn't refuse. The pieces were falling into place now. Why Jordan had appeared at the auction, why he had bid such an extraordinary amount, why he had immediately sought her out afterward. This hadn't been a spontaneous act of generosity. It had been a carefully orchestrated plan between two proud men, each determined to honor their own code of dignity. "Which brings me to why I'm here today," Jordan said, nodding to Karina Hill, who stepped forward with professional poise. "Mr. Garcia," she began formally, "based on Mr. Jordan's strong recommendation and your impressive background with the organization, I'm authorized to offer you a position as Special Advisor for Player Development with the Chicago Bulls, effective whenever your medical team clears you for part-time work." She opened her portfolio and extracted an official letter bearing the Bulls logo. "The position would be tailored to accommodate your recovery needs, starting with just a few hours per week and focusing initially on our rookie orientation program. Your experience bridging cultural gaps for international players is of particular interest to us, given the increasingly global nature of our roster." Antonio accepted the letter with steady hands, his expression unreadable as he scanned its contents. Erica watched him closely, aware of how meaningful this moment was, not just professionally, but as a milestone in his recovery, a tangible goal to work toward. "You don't have to decide immediately," Jordan added, "but I meant what I said about needing your perspective. Too many young players today are lost in the business of basketball. They need someone who remembers it's still a game at its heart." Antonio looked up from the letter, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I once told a frustrated rookie that he would change the game forever," he said quietly. "I never imagined he would end up changing my life twice." The rehabilitation center's community room had never hosted such an eclectic gathering. Physical therapists and nurses stood awkwardly alongside Bulls executives, sports memorabilia experts, and even a documentary filmmaker, all watching as Antonio Garcia took what everyone present recognized as a monumentally significant step. 6 weeks had passed since that morning in Garfield Park. 6 weeks of intensified therapy, renewed determination, and a recovery rate that had left Antonio's doctors both baffled and impressed. Today marked his official discharge from inpatient rehabilitation and the first public viewing of what the sports world was already calling the Lost Jordans. "Steady now," Erica murmured, standing close as her father gripped his walker, muscles tensing with effort. Antonio nodded, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he slowly pushed himself to a standing position. The room collectively held its breath. For most present, this was simply a heartwarming scene of recovery. For Erica, who had witnessed countless failed attempts and frustrating setbacks over the past months, it represented something approaching, a miracle. 3 steps. That was the goal they had set. 3 steps toward the display case where the Air Jordan sneakers now rested on a custom-built pedestal on loan to the rehabilitation center for this special occasion. Antonio's first step was hesitant, his body remembering the fall that had accompanied his previous attempt last week. The second came easier, confidence-building. By the third, a smile had replaced his grimace of concentration. But he didn't stop there. A 4th step followed, then a 5th, each more assured than the last, until he stood directly before the display case, gazing at the shoes that had become so much more than mere memorabilia. Applause erupted around the room. Erica didn't bother, wiping away the tears that streamed down her face. Dr. Veronica Rich, who had overseen Antonio's treatment from the beginning, shook her head in amazement. "If you'd told me 2 months ago that he'd be walking unassisted, I'd have said you were being unrealistically optimistic," she confided to Erica. "Whatever motivated this turnaround, I wish we could bottle it for all our patients." Erica smiled, watching as Ryan Jenkins approached her father with respectful deference. Over the past weeks, the young collector had become a regular visitor, his initial interest in documenting the sneaker's provenance evolving into a genuine friendship with Antonio. Their shared passion for basketball history had provided Antonio with mental stimulation that complemented his physical therapy perfectly. "Mr. Garcia," Ryan said, extending a small velvet box. "I brought something I thought you might appreciate for today's occasion." Antonio accepted the box with a quizzical expression, balancing carefully against his walker as he opened it to reveal a lapel pin bearing the original Bulls logo from the mid-'80s. "This was part of the staff uniform during your time with the team," Ryan explained. "I've been collecting Bulls memorabilia since I was a kid, and when I came across this, I immediately thought of you." Antonio's weathered fingers traced the emblem reverently. "I lost mine years ago during a move," he said, genuine emotion in his voice. "This means a great deal to me, Ryan." As Ryan helped Antonio affix the pin to his shirt collar, Erica caught his eye and mouthed a silent "thank you." Their own relationship had developed alongside his friendship with her father, cautiously at first, then with increasing ease as they discovered shared interests beyond basketball. Coffee had led to dinners to long conversations, and somewhere along the way, Erica had found herself opening up to possibilities she had long since set aside while focusing on her father's care. Across the room, Michael Jordan observed the scene with quiet satisfaction. Though he had initially planned to attend only the private ceremony scheduled for later that afternoon, he had arrived early, slipping in without fanfare to witness Antonio's achievement firsthand. "He's doing remarkably well," Jordan commented, as Karina Hill joined him by the window. "Better than anyone expected," she agreed. "The medical team says his determination is off the charts, even for stroke recovery patients who tend to be highly motivated as a group." "That doesn't surprise me. When Antonio sets his mind to something, it gets done." Jordan's gaze shifted to where Erica stood, now deep in conversation with Dr. Rich. "His daughter has the same quality," Karina nodded. "She's been instrumental in coordinating the Hall of Fame exhibition details while managing her father's recovery schedule. Impressive multitasker." "Speaking of which," Jordan said, "have we finalized the employment terms for Antonio's advisory role?" "All set. Flexible hours, remote work options when needed, and a focus on our international player integration program. We're starting him with our Venezuelan rookie point guard, Gabriel Daniels, who's struggling with the transition." Karina hesitated, then added, "The PR team is also interested in documenting Antonio's story as part of our community outreach initiative, if he's comfortable with that." Jordan considered this. "Run it by him, but don't pressure. Antonio's never been one for spotlights." Their conversation was interrupted as Jeffrey Valdez, the filmmaker who had been quietly documenting the sneaker's journey since the auction, approached with respectful deference. "Mr. Jordan, I was hoping to get your thoughts on camera regarding the historical significance of these particular shoes. Most people focus on the later Air Jordan models, but these represent the beginning of what became a cultural phenomenon." Jordan smiled slightly. "The beginning?" he echoed. "No, these represent something that happened along the way. The beginning was on a public court in North Carolina with shoes that would look like antiques today." Valdez recognized the gentle correction and adjusted accordingly. "Of course. Would you share what makes these specific shoes meaningful to you personally?" Jordan glanced toward Antonio, who was now seated, surrounded by well-wishers. "Those shoes walked the court during one of the most challenging periods of my career, when I was still proving myself. They carry the weight of doubt, determination, and lessons learned. But their real value isn't in what they meant to me. It's in what Antonio Garcia saw in the young man wearing them. Sometimes we need someone else to remind us who we are when pressure threatens to reshape us into something we're not." Before Valdez could probe further, Jordan excused himself and made his way through the crowd toward Antonio. The room quieted as people recognized that something significant was about to happen. "Antonio," Jordan said warmly, "congratulations on your discharge. Your progress has been remarkable." "I had good motivation," Antonio replied, gesturing toward the displayed sneakers, and then to Erica. Jordan nodded in understanding. The Basketball Hall of Fame representatives are eager to discuss the formal donation ceremony. They're prepared to create a special exhibit highlighting not just my rookie season, but the behind-the-scenes support staff who make the game possible. Antonio's eyes widened slightly. "That's unexpected. Most fans don't care about equipment managers and locker room attendants. Most fans don't understand that basketball is more than what happens on the court during regulation time," Jordan countered. "This is an opportunity to tell a more complete story." Erica, who had joined them during this exchange, added, "Dad, they want to name a scholarship program after you for children of arena staff and support personnel. Full college funding for qualified applicants." Antonio fell silent, visibly moved by the significance of this legacy. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but emotional. "When I left Honduras, I dreamed of making my mark in basketball, somehow. Never imagined it would be like this." Jordan clasped his shoulder. "Some dreams take unexpected paths to fulfillment." The formal portion of the event began shortly thereafter, with brief speeches from the Rehabilitation Center's director and representatives from the Bulls organization. But the most powerful moment came when Antonio, supported by his walker but standing independently, addressed the gathered crowd. "Many of you know me only as the man who owned these famous sneakers," he began, gesturing toward the display case. "Others know me as a patient fighting to regain what a stroke took from me. But I've been many things in my life: an immigrant with big dreams, a father trying to provide for his daughter, a behind-the-scenes worker in a world of spotlights and stardom." He paused, gathering strength. "These shoes became valuable because of who wore them and what he accomplished. But to me, they've always been valuable for a different reason. They represented a moment of human connection in a business that often loses sight of the humanity at its core." Antonio's gaze found Jordan in the crowd. Sometimes a small kindness leaves an impression that lasts a lifetime. Sometimes it comes full circle in ways you could never anticipate. Looking to Erica, he continued, "When my daughter made the difficult decision to sell these shoes to secure our future, she thought she was losing a piece of our family history. Instead, that decision reconnected us to that history in a deeper way and opened doors we thought had closed forever." His voice strengthened as he concluded, "Today, as I leave this facility on my own 2 feet, I carry with me a profound lesson. Our greatest treasures aren't the objects we possess, but the moments of genuine connection they represent. And those can never be auctioned away." The room erupted in applause. As it subsided, the formal proceedings gave way to individual conversations and the casual mingling of the diverse attendees. Erica found herself approached by Brett Perry, the Bulls head coach, who had arrived midway through the ceremony. "Your father is an inspiration," Perry said sincerely. "We've already discussed how his perspective could help our younger players develop resilience through setbacks. He's excited about the opportunity," Erica replied, "though he's trying not to show it too much." Perry smiled knowingly. Dignified humility, a quality in short supply these days. "Speaking of opportunities," he continued, smoothly changing subjects, "Jordan mentioned you have a background in sports marketing and content development." Erica nodded, surprised. "I was with Horizon Sports until the downsizing last year. Since then, I've been freelancing while caring for my dad. We're expanding our digital content team, focusing on player stories beyond game highlights, community involvement, personal journeys, cultural bridges. Given your unique perspective and experience, I'd like you to consider applying. Karina can share the details." Before Erica could process this unexpected development, she felt a gentle touch on her arm. Ryan had appeared beside her, his expression suggesting he had news to share. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, acknowledging Coach Perry with a respectful nod. "Erica, there's someone here your father might want to meet." Following his gaze, Erica spotted an elderly gentleman in a wheelchair near the entrance, attended by a younger woman who bore a striking resemblance to him. Though she didn't recognize them, something in their bearing, a mixture of uncertainty and determination, seemed familiar. "Who are they?" she asked Ryan softly. "Jacob Logan," Ryan replied. "He was an equipment manager for the Knicks during the same period your father worked for the Bulls. Apparently, he has his own Jordan story from that era. When he heard about today's event through the Basketball Veterans Network, he asked if he could attend." Erica's gaze shifted to her father, now deep in conversation with Jordan and several Hall of Fame representatives. "Does Dad know?" Ryan shook his head. "I wanted to check with you first. Mr. Logan has health challenges of his own, so this took considerable effort for him." Without hesitation, Erica made her way to the newcomers, introducing herself with warm hospitality. Jacob Logan's weathered face lit up with recognition at her name. "Ms. Garcia," he said, his voice carrying the distinctive cadence of a lifelong New Yorker. "Your father and I never formally met back in the day. Different teams, different cities, but we occupied the same invisible world behind the scenes. When I heard about his stroke and then this remarkable turn of events with the shoes," he gestured expressively, "some stories need to be shared between those who understand." Erica was struck by the parallel journeys, two men who had witnessed basketball history from the shadows, each carrying their own unique perspectives on the legends who typically dominated the narrative. "My father would be honored to meet you," she assured him, already anticipating Antonio's reaction to this unexpected connection to his past. As she guided Logan toward her father, Erica caught Jordan watching the interaction with evident interest. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and he gave her a subtle nod of approval. She realized then that this gathering represented something more significant than a celebration of recovery or valuable memorabilia. It was the unveiling of a hidden history, the acknowledgement of those whose contributions had gone largely unrecognized in the official records of the game. The Rehabilitation Center's community room had become, however temporarily, a nexus where past and present converged, where the traditionally celebrated and the historically overlooked found common ground in their shared love for basketball and the human connections it fostered. As Antonio turned to greet Jacob Logan, his face registering surprise and then genuine pleasure, Erica felt a profound sense of rightness descend over the gathering. The journey that had begun with desperate necessity, selling a treasured family heirloom to survive financial hardship, had evolved into something none of them could have anticipated. A restoration not just of Antonio's health, but of a narrative long overshadowed by highlight reels and championship trophies. The true value of Michael Jordan's rookie sneakers, it seemed, lay not in their auction price or even their historical significance to basketball, but in their power to bring together lives that might otherwise have remained disconnected, and to remind everyone present that behind every sports legend stands a network of individuals whose quiet contributions make greatness possible. The Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts hummed with anticipation as final preparations were made for the evening's private ceremony. Spotlights illuminated the special exhibition area where the legacy of support, basketball's unsung heroes, would officially open to the public the following morning. At its center, displayed in a custom-designed case with optimal lighting and climate control, rested the Air Jordan 1 sneakers that had sparked an extraordinary chain of events. 6 months had passed since Antonio Garcia's discharge from rehabilitation. 6 months of remarkable progress, new beginnings, and unexpected opportunities that had transformed the lives of everyone connected to what the basketball world now referred to simply as the Garcia Jordans. In the staff preparation room, Erica adjusted her father's tie with practiced hands, marveling at how far they had come. Antonio stood tall and steady, the walker long since replaced by a discreet cane that he relied on less each day. His position with the Bulls player development team had evolved from a part-time advisory role to a comprehensive program focusing on international player integration and mentorship. The Venezuelan rookie, Gabriel Daniels, had blossomed under Antonio's guidance, recently earning Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month honors. "Are you nervous?" Erica asked, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her father's suit jacket, a gift from Michael Jordan, tailored specifically for this occasion. Antonio shook his head, his expression serene. "Grateful," he corrected. "Nervous is for uncertainties. Tonight feels like completion." Erica understood. The ceremony represented the closing of one chapter and the celebration of a new one, a perfect narrative arc that none of them could have scripted. Her own life had undergone equally dramatic changes. The Bulls' digital content position had evolved into a directorship role, overseeing a new initiative, documenting the organization's history through the perspectives of staff, community figures, and unheralded contributors to the team's legacy. Her first major project, a mini-documentary series on equipment managers, trainers, and facility staff during the championship years, had garnered unexpected acclaim in basketball circles and beyond. And then there was Ryan. She glanced across the room to where he was engaged in animated conversation with Jeffrey Valdez, the filmmaker whose documentary on the sneakers journey was now being considered for several Sports Film Festival awards. What had begun as a professional connection had deepened into something neither of them had anticipated, but both now cherished. His passion for basketball history complemented her creative vision perfectly, leading to collaborations both personal and professional. "The exhibition looks remarkable," Dr. Veronica Rich commented, joining them after previewing the display. Now a close family friend, she had traveled from Chicago specifically for the ceremony. "They've created something truly special around those sneakers." Indeed, the exhibition had expanded far beyond its original concept. What began as a simple display for the famous footwear had evolved into a comprehensive tribute to the behind-the-scenes personnel who made professional basketball possible. From equipment managers and training staff to facility workers and team administrators, Antonio's story had opened a door to these previously untold narratives, creating a richer, more complete picture of the sport's history. A staff member appeared at the doorway. "5-minute warning, everyone. Mr. Jordan has arrived, and we're almost ready to begin." As the group made their way toward the main exhibition hall, they passed display cases featuring uniforms, equipment, and photographs spanning decades of basketball history. Antonio paused briefly before one containing a maintenance staff uniform from the 1980s Chicago Stadium. His uniform, preserved and presented with the same reverence typically reserved for player jerseys. "Still can't believe they included this," he murmured, genuine emotion in his voice. "It belongs here," Erica assured him, gently squeezing his arm. "Just as much as any championship trophy." The exhibition hall was filled to capacity with an eclectic gathering. Hall of Fame officials, current and former NBA players, sports historians, and media representatives. But most significant to Antonio were the dozens of former and current support staff members from teams across the league, people whose contributions rarely received public acknowledgement. Jacob Logan sat in a position of honor near the front, representing the Knicks' behind-the-scenes personnel from the Jordan era. Michael Jordan stood conversing with Hall of Fame executives near the podium, his commanding presence undiminished. By time, when he spotted Antonio and Erica entering, he excused himself and made his way toward them. "Antonio," he greeted warmly, clasping his hand. "Tonight's your night. How are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed," Antonio admitted. "All this attention for doing my job." Jordan smiled knowingly. "That's exactly why you deserve it. You never saw it as just a job." Turning to Erica, he added, "Your documentary series is making waves. The commissioner mentioned it specifically during our last ownership meeting." Before Erica could respond, the hall's director approached, signaling it was time to begin. The crowd settled into their seats as Jordan took the podium, his voice commanding immediate attention. "Basketball," he began, "is often reduced to statistics, championships, and individual accolades. We celebrate the players who score the most points, the coaches who design the winning plays, the owners who build successful franchises. But tonight, we acknowledge a fundamental truth that gets overlooked. No one achieves greatness alone." His gaze swept the room, lingering on the support staff members present. "For every moment I spent in the spotlight, hundreds of dedicated professionals worked in the shadows to make it possible. People who arrived before dawn and left long after midnight. People who knew your preferences without being told, who anticipated needs before they arose, who created the conditions where excellence could flourish." Jordan gestured toward the displayed sneakers. "These shoes have become valuable because of what happened while I was wearing them. But their true significance lies in the story they tell about connection, recognition, and the human elements of sport that box scores can never capture." He invited Antonio to join him at the podium. As Antonio made his way forward with dignified determination, a wave of appreciative applause filled the hall. Antonio Garcia represents thousands of individuals whose names rarely appear in basketball histories, Jordan continued. Yet their impact is immeasurable, not just in maintaining facilities or managing equipment, but in providing the human interactions that sustain athletes through victories and defeats. Antonio stood beside Jordan now, his posture straight and proud despite the emotional weight of the moment. The Antonio Garcia Scholarship Foundation, which officially launches tonight, will ensure that children of arena and support staff across all NBA teams have educational opportunities regardless of financial circumstances, Jordan announced. Additionally, the permanent exhibition we're inaugurating will continue to expand, documenting and honoring the contributions of those whose work makes basketball possible at every level. He turned to Antonio, offering him the podium. The hall fell silent as Antonio collected himself, the magnitude of the moment evident in his expression. "When I left Honduras for Chicago 40 years ago," Antonio began, his voice steady and clear, "I carried two things, a basketball signed by my village teammates and my father's advice. He told me, no matter what work you find, do it with such excellence that it cannot be ignored." He paused, emotion briefly overtaking him. "For 15 years, I maintained the courts where Michael Jordan and the Bulls created history. I considered it a privilege, never expecting recognition beyond my paycheck. The shoes displayed here tonight were a personal gesture of appreciation that I treasured privately for decades." Antonio's gaze found Erica in the audience, his expression softening. "When health challenges and financial pressures led my daughter to make the difficult decision to auction these sneakers, I believed we were losing a piece of our personal history. Instead, that decision set in motion events that have enriched our lives immeasurably and created opportunities to acknowledge the countless individuals who, like me, found purpose in supporting greatness rather than seeking it for themselves." He turned slightly, addressing the section where former and current support staff members sat. This exhibition and scholarship foundation honor all of you. The early morning arrival crew and late-night cleanup staff, the equipment managers and locker room attendants, the training and medical personnel who rarely receive public acknowledgement. Your contributions matter. Your work has dignity. Your stories deserve to be told. As Antonio concluded his remarks, the hall erupted in a standing ovation. Jordan embraced him with genuine respect before they proceeded together to the exhibition case for the official unveiling ceremony. The evening continued with various speakers sharing perspectives on the historical significance of the exhibition, interspersed with personal anecdotes from support staff members whose stories had never before been publicly acknowledged. What might have been a simple display of valuable basketball memorabilia had transformed into a meaningful recognition of basketball's human infrastructure. During a brief intermission, Erica found herself standing beside the main exhibition case, studying the sneakers that had catalyzed such profound changes in their lives. Ryan joined her, slipping his hand comfortably into hers. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. Erica smiled, leaning slightly against his shoulder. "Just thinking about value," she replied. 6 months ago, these were worth $500,000 to Michael Jordan, but their real value was never monetary, was it? Ryan considered this thoughtfully. "Objects carry the value we assign to them," he said. "For collectors like me, they're tangible connections to moments we admire. For your father, they represented recognition of his dignity. For Jordan, they became a vehicle to honor someone who saw him as a person, not just a basketball phenomenon." "And now?" Erica prompted. "Now there's something else entirely. A catalyst for institutional change, for telling stories that would otherwise remain untold." Ryan gestured toward the expanded exhibitions surrounding them. "That's the fascinating thing about truly significant artifacts. Their meaning continues to evolve, affecting more lives than anyone could predict." Across the hall, Antonio was engaged in animated conversation with Jacob Logan and several other former team staff members, their shared experiences bridging team rivalries and decades of separation. Watching him, confident, purposeful, fully engaged, Erica felt a profound sense of completion. Dr. Rich approached, champagne flute in hand. "Your father is the star of the evening," she observed. "A remarkable turnaround from where we were a year ago." "In every possible way," Erica agreed. "It's not just the physical recovery, though. That's been extraordinary. It's his sense of purpose. The scholarship foundation, the mentorship program with international players, this exhibition, they've given him something the medical interventions alone couldn't provide," meaning, Dr. Rich nodded in understanding. "Often the most powerful rehabilitation tool available, yet impossible to prescribe." As the formal program resumed, Jordan invited all current and former support staff members present to join him and Antonio near the podium for a group photograph, an unprecedented acknowledgement of their collective contribution to basketball history. The resulting image, capturing dozens of individuals whose work had largely gone unrecognized throughout their careers, would later become the exhibition's iconic centerpiece. The evening concluded with the official transfer of the sneakers' ownership to the Hall of Fame, formalized in a brief ceremony where Antonio and Jordan jointly signed the donation documents. Though the sneakers had technically been Jordan's property since the auction, this symbolic gesture reinforced their shared stewardship of the legacy they represented. As guests began to depart, Erica noticed her father standing alone before the main exhibition case. Seemingly lost in contemplation, she approached quietly, respecting his moment of reflection. "Everything okay, Dad?" she asked gently. Antonio turned to her with eyes bright with emotion but remarkably at peace. "I was just remembering something your mother used to say," he replied, his voice soft with reminiscence. "She always told you that everything happens for a reason, even the difficult things." Erica nodded, feeling her mother's presence especially strongly in this moment of culmination. She would have loved seeing all of this. "She sees," Antonio said with quiet certainty, "and I think she would say that sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive disguised as its greatest challenges." He gazed once more at the displayed sneakers, worn leather, faded laces, scuff marks that testified to their authenticity, before turning toward the exit where Ryan waited patiently. "Ready to go?" Erica asked, offering her arm, though he rarely needed physical support anymore. Antonio nodded, straightening his shoulders. "Ready for whatever comes next," he corrected with a smile. As they walked together toward the future, leaving behind the artifact that had changed their lives in such unexpected ways, Antonio Garcia reflected on life's curious trajectories, a young equipment manager's kindness to a frustrated rookie, a legendary player remembering that kindness decades later, a desperate auction born of financial necessity, a generous bid motivated by respect rather than acquisition. Each moment, seemingly small when experienced, had created ripples that eventually converged into a wave of transformation, not just for Antonio and his family, but for an entire community of individuals whose contributions to basketball had long gone uncelebrated. The sneakers would remain at the Hall of Fame, preserved behind protective glass, their monetary value now irrelevant compared to the story they represented. But the true legacy of the Garcia Jordans would continue to unfold through the scholarship recipients, the mentored players, the documented histories, and the institutional recognition of basketball's unsung heroes. It was, Antonio thought as they stepped into the cool Massachusetts evening, a fitting final chapter to a story that had begun with a simple pair of game-worn shoes and the human connection they represented.